Hey there, Dave K9AT with yet another YouTube video for you guys. And this time it's going to be on my elaborate sump pump system that I've created over the past few years. First off, I'm going to get really basic to bring everyone up to speed and explain what the sump pump is used for. I hadn't heard of the sump pump until I moved to Illinois from Minnesota. Back in Minnesota, the soil always drains quickly because it's mostly a sandy loam mixture, so there's no need for the sump pumps. Well, in Illinois, there is a lot of clay that retains water. This water that collects needs to be removed, otherwise, it will seep into your basement and flood it. In an attempt to remove this water that collects, drain tile or plastic round tubing with slits in it are installed at the base of the foundation when the house is built. This tubing encircles the entire house. This tubing starts in one end of the sump pump pit and encircles the entire house and ends up in the other opening of the sump pit. There, the water collects as it percolates through the soil. The pump then removes it, discharging this water out of the house. Normally, this water would be discharged into a connection to the storm sewer where the runoff normally would go for the street. But I live in a subdivision that's unincorporated and we don't have storm sewers. So each property owner has to handle this water on their own. When we first moved into this house, it had a sump pump, but it was the variety of pump that was out of the water instead of an in-water pump. This pump was really loud, and to make matters worse, our bedroom was directly above this pump. So this was the first thing that we changed. I did some research and found the Hydromatic third horsepower submersible pump, and boy, was it quiet. This pump was not available at the big box store, so I had to order it online. Besides being quieter, it used a fixed mounted pressure switch instead of the old float switch, which is a bulb that sometimes got stuck on the wall of the sump pit and would not engage when it was time to empty the pit, and thus got close to overflowing the pit. So then the next phase of our sump pump story was when we wanted to get a backup or a second sump pump. And by the way, if you're going to get a second pump to be on standby, that's not necessarily going to be a backup pump, but on standby, think about it. When do you think you should get that? How about when it's not raining? Because when it's raining, everybody needs that sump pump and the shelves in the store will be empty. In our case, we wanted that backup sump pump to function as a backup to the primary. So I checked out the backup sump pumps at the big box stores, and well, honestly, they didn't look that beefy in my estimation, and the batteries were, well, very small. I felt that they might last for a few drains of the pit and then die. Also, let's face it, when there's a lot of rain, chances are the power is going to be out too. So besides the pump failing, the pump could fail and the electricity could be out too. I thought up an idea and then built it. I installed a primary pump on a single brick. That way, the silt that might come through the tubes would fall to the bottom of the pit and not get caught up in the pump. I then installed a second hydromatic pump and a bit higher up on the pit in two blocks. Sitting higher in the pit, the second pump will kick in if the primary fails. The notification to let us know if the primary pump has failed is this float switch that is normally open. When the water rises, engaging the second pump, the float switch will close and send an SMS message via an alarm system we have in the house. While this notification is being sent, the secondary pump will kick in. This pump is battery operated from a 1,000-watt inverter connected to a marine deep cycle battery that has a trickle charger running on it. You can see the heavy gauge cables running from the inverter to the battery, and the pump is plugged into the inverter. The idea is that no matter if the pump fails or the electricity goes out, the pump will still pump the water out. I periodically test this by keeping the primary pump unplugged, letting the water rise in the pit. I'll test this to make sure the SMS notification is sent and the secondary pump starts up running off the inverter power from the battery. Now, when the shit hits the fan and my secondary pump fails, I have two methods of notification. When the water is leaving the top of the pit, the one sensor on the floor will short the two contact points from the water and sending out a different SMS message. Similarly, a local buzzer that sits on the floor will send out an SOS when the two contacts are shorted with this water. The two output pipes from both of the sump pumps come together and travel to the outside. The red valve is turned off because that went to the front yard outside, but it's plugged somewhere out in the yard on its way to the culvert in the front yard. So the water leaves from the side of the house. In order to check on the system to see if these SMS alarms that I'm receiving are real, I've installed an IP camera. I also have a TP-Link switch installed that I can turn on the light remotely. The other TP-Link switch is for a heated wire that I've added to the outside pipe to keep the water flowing in the pipe. Because once the pipe freezes, then the water won't flow. I figured out recently that the freezing temperature in the pipe buried in the ground is between 16 and 20. Weather conditions can change rapidly from the water that will flow easily to an ice blockage. So I can turn this wire on remotely. And I can do all this with the, being careful here, Alexa. Careful not to trigger her. But while I'm here, I will test the water, the pump, and make sure it works, because this is the first time in the season that I've been able to run the pump since it's warm outside and the water, the snow is melting. So the switch, this is the control to turn on the switch from the pressure pump, the pump it down there. So when that control sends a signal to this little block, then the electric will work. Okay, so I'm bypassing this switch and testing the pump. So if you listen, you'll hear it run. And this is how loud it is. It's not loud at all. And eventually it will get down to the bottom. And it, this is a manual process that I'm doing right now. But this will occur automatically without me being here. And that's why, or this is the way the sump pumps are supposed to work. And we're getting near the end. And it's getting louder as it's the baffling you hear are the pipes giving the water into the pit from the drain tile surrounding the house. Okay, so I'm outside the house now, and this is where the water for the sump pumps leaves the basement. And so originally I had just this piece right here, and it would spray right here. And my neighbor here, who was trying to grow lilacs, I would flood his yard, and this whole area would get all wet. So, so the first attempt at diverting the water was, as I used to call it, the Alaskan pipeline, because it was really long and ugly. So what I did is I built an extension of this PVC pipe way out into the yard, and I hooked around going that way to the front yard with the pipe. And I think I've got some pictures of it, so I'll show you how heinous it was. And I got picked on by my families for the ugliness, but anyways, it worked. But what it did is I had to make sure the grade of the pipe was pitched in such a way that the water would flow and there was no sags, you know, in the pipe. Otherwise, the water would freeze in the pipe and then present a block, and then the water wouldn't go anyway. And this would be during the winter when we're kind of like in between hot and cold, and or actually freezing and cold. And so the water would freeze in the pipe if that pipe had a low spot in the sagging pipe. So anyways, now what I have done now, this is the updated thing. So this is the wire that I was talking about for the TP-Link that I can turn on. And so I've cut the pipe and I've ran the wire along the pipe and down the tube right here into the ground. And so let's follow where the water goes. So now, if you can imagine, there's black corrugated pipe here, and it goes all the way out to the street now. So I'm making Skip, my neighbor, happy. And originally this was the path for the Alaskan pipeline, like affectionately called. And so it went all the way out here to where I've got the new puddle of water, because this is where it empties out. Okay? And so this is where the water that I just pumped out goes. Now, obviously, I don't have a sewer system to catch all this runoff, because if I was in a subdivision like this across the street, I would have a place to pump the water for the runoff water. But in this case, since I'm in unincorporated, water goes in the culverts, and it eventually evaporates or soaked in, and doesn't go into Skip's backyard. Okay, so this is the system I've developed, and so let me know if you think I'm going overboard or not. But you know, I had to do what I had to do because the water needed to be managed when the rains fell. It had to go somewhere. So this is what I ended up with, and I've not made a change to this in several years, but I've been here 16 years now. So initially this was thought out and engineered by yours truly. So let me know in the comments section if you liked this video, or did I go overboard, or maybe you got a similar system at your house. But you know, I guess why I did this is where I used to live. The neighbor went on vacation, and so when she came back, all her furniture, sofas or whatever, bookcases, were floating in the basement because the sump pump failed. So that memory is indelibly itched in my brain, and I do not want to repeat that scenario at my house. I want to address this tube right now that's coming off the gutter, and it goes underground over to here, and that's where it empties out. So when it's warm and the snow starts to melt on the roof, what happens for our house is the snow turns into water and runs down the gutter and has nowhere to go as it's coming down off the pipe, drain pipe here, and it can't go anywhere because the tube going underground to that hole is frozen. So what we do is we've got another heated wire in the running along the gutter right here. And so what I do is I duck out here and plug this cable in right there, and it goes this plug right here. And so this plug and the wire run the full length of the house along in the gutter and exit the gutter and down the drain pipe and run in that black tube, and that way the tube, which has water in it, it's ice, melts, and that way the water can flow. So that's another thing that we do on our house to manage the water from the melt in the spring. Okay, well, thanks for watching. If you like this, like and subscribe, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. So K9AT, Best 73.